Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to do for the next 45 minutes is really spend some time thinking about being active and being active with HD. And I think it's very, very clear across history that what we need to be thinking of, whoever we are, is about being activity. And Plato said a long time ago, lack of activity destroys the good condition of every human being.
Sorry, Monica, to interrupt you. There's definitely picking up sound at the back of the room, is there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. Do I need to lean right forward?
Higher to the mic. Is that better? You okay, Adam?
Yeah? Okay. So what we're talking about in terms of physiotherapy and physical activity is that really thinking about methodical physical activity and exercise to maintain general health. And it doesn't matter, that, this applies to everybody. It's about being as active as we can. And this has been one of the sort of underpinning philosophies of the work that we've been doing in Cardiff over the last 15 years. Really thinking about, well, if we want to stay active and we want to know about how we can do this, despite having barriers because of the Huntington's disease, what is it that we can do and how can we help you with that? And it's clearly, the point is that actually, and this has been written about in HD Buzz, I think some of you may read HD Buzz, that, why isn't it a good idea for Huntington's disease patients to stay in shape? Well, of course, most likely it is. And what we need to do is think about these obvious ideas and formally test them. And that's what we've been doing in Cardiff. So we've established a program of research which has allowed us to really start to understand what it means to be physically active with Huntington's disease and how we can do that and how we can help people to do that. So over a series of studies, and I think in Cardiff we've now completed about 7 different clinical studies and trials in telling us about physical activity and exercise. And so people with HD have told us, they perceive exercise to be beneficial. There are, and we've been able to document physical benefits in terms of walking. So when we talk about gait, we mean walking and balance. How you control your movements. We're noticing that people may be falling less, and there's also improvements in terms of speech and swallowing. But socially, there are also benefits from staying active. Being able to experience a little bit more independence, or being able to maintain independence when actually there are a lot of challenges around you. Well-being, well-being and mood. This is, clearly across any condition, being physically active helps with well-being and mood. We've seen in our studies that these benefits will last for longer than a month, provided you keep active and keep exercising. So some of the work we've done has been focused on, well, how can we help people with HD to stay active? And we talk about that in terms of the facilitators. So what are the things that make it easier? So from a personal perspective, it's about believing in yourself and having the confidence to be able to go out and do some form of activity. Now, what I will say very clearly is it's really important to think about physical activity separate from structured exercise. And some of our very early work, people were saying to us, but I don't want to be sweaty. I don't want to go to a gym. And I think it's important to know that you don't have to put physical activity in the box which says, I get hot and sweaty. It can be much more. It can be just about getting out and about. So there are personal factors around whether somebody may feel confident and able to stay active and do exercise. And some of the work of the physiotherapist may be in helping people negotiate those feelings and develop the confidence to be able to go out and do things. There's also very clearly the role of the caregiver and having some committed support, and whether that be a formal caregiver or a family caregiver or even family, friends and other groups. We do know that as the disease progresses, that people need more help. And it's about identifying that and finding ways that don't always put the burden on one single person, but also finding ways to stay active and have the help that you need to be active. In terms of the different types of activities and what we call training factors, this does need to be personal. This does need to be something that is individual to your interests and what you really want to do. If you have never been somebody who goes to the gym, there's no reason why you would want to start going to the gym. But if you have always enjoyed gardening and being outdoors, then there have to be ways in which we can make it easier for you to do the things that you enjoyed. We know from the research that's been done that doing intensive interventions is possible. It does work and it does not cause any harm. So that's important to know about. But these are structured interventions, so these may be, for example, intensive rehabilitation where you might go for 5 days and do something for 6 hours a day, and we know that it can work and it does work and it's been tried out and it is used, it's part of the standard care in Norway, for example. And we know that being part of a group can be helpful. Some people don't like being parts of groups. Other people really like being parts of groups. So this is when I talk about being individualized. It's about thinking about what are the things that are important to you and that will work or that will help you to be able to stay active. There are clearly, with somebody who has Huntington's disease, there are clearly barriers. There are clearly things that make it difficult. And I think we should be clear that being active is something that is difficult for a lot of people. Actually staying regularly active, I think you could walk along the street and say to anybody, you know, how much exercise do you do? And the general population will not meet the requirements that are set out by the World Health Organization for levels of regular exercise. So it is not easy, but it is harder if you have Huntington's disease. And so that's where we need to think about what are the strategies and how can we make it easier for somebody. So you will all see on your tables a sheet like this, which is something that we've developed in Cardiff. And it really is about helping you start to think about why you might want to be active. So on the left-hand side, in the purple blocks, we've listed some of the things that we know from the evidence, from the literature, are related to kind of the benefits of being physically active. And there are general health benefits. There are benefits in terms of sleep, managing your mood, and on the whole, people who manage to stay active tend to have a better quality of life. But then in terms of Huntington's, as I've said, we also know from the studies that we've done that people have more confidence, that they feel as if their balance is better, their mobility does improve, and their ability to cope with the activities of daily life, so independence, seems to be maintained. There are also benefits in terms of posture and breathing. So when we think about this, and as I've said, try not to think about exercise in the hot and sweaty box in the gym, but think about it as physical activity. So when we think about it, when we think about exercise, we think about fitness, spinning classes. I did a spinning class last night. I did a Northern Irish spinning class. It was quite hard work. So we can think about that, but there are other options. It doesn't have to be something that makes you like that. You could be, for example, thinking about martial arts, and I know I've heard about a Tai Chi group yesterday, which was running in Scotland. So, you know, these are really good opportunities to think about how one might achieve some levels of fitness. You could think about aqua aerobics. If you were someone who swam, about getting into a pool. It doesn't have to be swimming lengths. It can literally be walking in a pool because it's safe, because you're not going to fall over, but you need to be thinking about the environment and how you could get into the pool. In terms of strength, it doesn't have to be weight training, right? It doesn't have to be, but you could be doing what we call outdoor gym. So you could be going out and thinking about, and I'm not sure about what are in the what's in the parks and in this area, but for example, in the parks where I live, there are lots of different sets of equipment in the gyms. So we could be thinking about, well, how can you use those? What can you do? In terms of flexibility, yoga. Now, I know a lot of people say, if one more person tells me to go and do yoga, yoga is one option, but there are other options. So there are different groups, and in the local leisure centres, usually there are groups that people can join where they can have supervised activities. It could be Pilates, it could be Tai Chi, walking football is some of the things that we've seen. Bocce, people may have seen bocce. So there are lots of different ways that we can think about doing different things that cover the spectrum of exercise and physical activity, where we think about fitness, strength, balance, and flexibility. But primarily, all of that, what you might think about is, can you move more at home? And can you move more outside? What is there in the home that you could be doing that is safe, but is meaning that you are doing a little bit more? So it could be sorry. It could be, for example, thinking about doing some gardening. It could be painting at home, but painting while you're standing up. It could just be doing a little bit more than sitting in the chair. And in our clinic, I can't tell you how many times I say to people, on a scale of 0 to 100, what percentage of time do you spend sitting? And most people say to me, I spend about 80 or 90% of my day sitting in a chair. So all we're saying is, what could you do that would be involving less sitting? And then you can be thinking about, well, what about moving outside, moving more outside? So the way that we've been doing it in our different interventions is that we've been thinking about an activity pyramid, where at the bottom we're saying, can you move a bit more? And can you sit a bit less, right? Trying to add some extra steps into the day. Taking the stairs instead of the lift, if you can. Parking your car a little bit further away from the shops so that you could walk that little bit further. And all the while, thinking about, well, am I safe? Okay? So it's really important. It's not about rushing out and going, right, I'm going to do loads more and I'm going to go upstairs. It's about making sure your environment is safe, but that you slowly and gradually can increase what you're doing day to day. And when we think about what counts as moderate activity, it could be gardening, it could be dancing, it could be walking, just going out and walking. Cycling on a stationary bike. Nowadays, there's also, and again, I'm not sure about what you have here, but we have cycle ability groups where there are three-wheel bikes, which are really good and well and stable. They're three-wheel recumbent bikes that you can get them in the parks. So there are ways to do this. So on the other side of your piece of paper, are some questions for you. And what I'd like to do now, just for the next 5 minutes, is get you in your groups and in your tables, just to sit down and think about what is important to you in terms of physical activity. What are the things that you like to do? What do you do now? And what would you like to be able to do? So there are pens around, and I'd just like you to think about those kinds of things. So there's a box, the green box, and you can just start to think about writing your thoughts and your ideas about what you would like to do. So has everybody had a chance to think about what you like to do and what you do now and what you'd like to be able to do? I hope everyone has. So my next question then for you is, well, who can I ask for advice? Because we know that when people have Huntington's disease, things may be a little bit different. Things may be more challenging, and when we are encouraging people to go out and about and be more active, we need to be thinking about some of the problems that are associated then with Huntington's disease. So who can I ask for advice? What is stopping me from doing the activity, and what support do I need? So these are the things that are a little bit harder, and I think in the setting here where you don't have, my understanding is that there's not a huge amount of support from within the health service, then that's where we need to start having some sort of important discussions about, well, where can you get help? And who can you ask for advice? Generally speaking, it will be your physiotherapist. It's trying to find out where those physiotherapists are. But we actually had 8 of them here yesterday from all the different, from 3 of the trusts, I think, across Northern Ireland. So we do know they're out there, and I do know that your care advisors know where they are. So when you're thinking about the kind of advice, then they are going to be your first port of call. But the other point is that I'm sharing a lot of information with your care advisors as well in terms of what the things are that where you can get the kinds of advice you might need. One of the really important things, and one of the things that we do in our clinic routinely, is that we work with people to practice getting up from the floor. Now, I say this because people with HD do tend to fall. And when we're saying to you, well, you know, it's important to go out and be active, it is, but it's not about going out and injuring yourself and then ending up with more problems. So what we do know is that people do fall, but actually it's practicing being able to get up from the floor that is actually really, really important. So before we start any regular program, we make sure that that person who is doing this is able to get up from the floor and can show us that. So we get them to get onto the floor. We don't ask them to fall. We ask them to go slowly onto the floor, and then we ask them to show us how they would get up from the floor. So that's an absolutely critical point to think about. Thinking about whether people might need walking aids, if walking aids are useful. In some people, walking aids are not useful because if they have involuntary movements, then the walking aids just get in the way. But in other people, walking aids can be useful. So thinking about aspects around how you might do these things. If you're thinking, well, I'm going to go and try the swimming pool, thinking about how one might get into the swimming pool. Are there easy access into the swimming pool? Are there lifeguards there that can help people get in and out of the pool? And what is the environment like? So thinking about those aspects. Or if there's group exercises, how might you get there? Are there gardening groups? Are there, I don't know, some of the things we've got in Cardiff, we've got litter picking groups and people who go out and do some voluntary painting of walls. So we will always have a volunteer who is able-bodied, who's around and with those groups, but actually just getting out and joining those groups is helpful. Some of the other things that we suggest is that if there is somebody who is needing a wheelchair, that the person who is more able-bodied could push that wheelchair. That's exercise for them. There could be group walks that where everybody walks together. So thinking about those things and about what's stopping you is one of the important aspects of planning your activity. And so when you're moving on to planning, well, you then get to the point of going, okay, I know where I'm going to go for help. I know the kinds of things I want to do. And then you can say, well, okay, how often will I do it? And where will I go? And that's where it's about going and looking for all the different resources that are available and saying, okay, where can I go? What can I do? And make no mistake, we do hear of people being turned away from leisure centres or being turned away from groups because of the way they appear. And when that does happen, I would encourage you to contact your care advisor and they can help. We've certainly written letters in the past and we've gone in and helped people negotiate the kind of, how would I call it, the barriers that people put up to allowing people to access regular physical activity. So once you've decided that, then the next question is, well, okay, how will you track your progress? So when we think about this in terms of clinical studies or physiotherapy studies, then we might do different measurements regularly. But actually, that's not what this is about. This is about how you might track your progress. And so some of you may say, well, actually, I want to use an activity tracker. There's lots of people out there who may use apps to record what they do. A lot more people are using Fitbits. People might use a diary, or actually you might say, you know what, I don't really want to track my activity. I don't care as long as I'm doing something. I just want to know that I'm feeling a bit better, and that's also fine. But how do activity trackers work? Well, you might wear a watch, and I've seen a few people already with Fitbits here. I know there's some people who use Strava a lot, and they upload their information onto Strava. But what does it do? Well, you wear a watch, you move around. There are sensors within that watch that will then be used to track your daily activity and record what you do. Or most people here have phones, and your phones will automatically record how many steps you take. So we are doing some work now in terms of how people with HD may use trackers. This is new work we're doing, and because what's really critical is that the tracker meets the needs of the person who's using it. And generally, these have not been designed with thinking about people who may have movement disorders. They are designed for the commercial market. But we use them, and we need to know how to use them, or we need to know if they're important. So I've sort of said, well, you know, they do need to be user-friendly. They need to be reliable. I guess the question is, how often do you need to charge them? Can you charge them? If there are requirements around that. And there are other aspects around how you might use these trackers that we are now starting to research as part of trying to understand physical activity. So we have a European consortium established, which is called Domino HD, and that is looking at how digital technologies can be used to understand people with HD's lifestyles. So we are needing to know about how people with HD feel about activity so that we can actually design better ways for people to use these trackers in their daily life. Because some of the things that I would say to people in clinic, you know, if they say, look, I've never been to the gym, I don't want to go to the gym, I don't want to swim, I don't want to do any of these things. And I say, well, how about trying to take a few more steps in the day? And actually, that's where these trackers are useful, trying to just do a little bit more. You will see on your tables a questionnaire where we are asking, and I'd really appreciate your help in filling this out. We are looking for people who either have HD, have family members with HD, or care for people with HD. And I've left these paper copies of the questionnaires on your table, and it's really asking you about how you use trackers, whether you would use these trackers, okay? And we've got coloured faces on the questionnaires. So the red one is, I really, 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 really don't want to use this. And the green one is, I will always use this, or I'm really happy to use this. Or there's an option for, I don't know. So at the top, we're only asking for the information about whether you have a HD, have a family member with HD, or care for a person with HD. So if you're happy to fill those out, we'll collect them in after the next session. So as I've said, and we really are quite positive about trying to find ways to help people with HD be active and stay active. And there clearly is a role for the physiotherapist in all of this, okay? There is a lot of information for physiotherapists. So for those of you who, I don't know whether this has happened to you, but some people say, well, I go to the physiotherapist and they say, I don't know what to do with you. You have Huntington's. And I have heard these stories. There is a lot of information available. There's guidance documents. We have exercise DVDs that are freely available for download from the website of the Huntington's Disease Association of England and Wales. However, I would be very happy to give them to, how do you say it? HDANI, there you go. I'd be very happy to give them to Zorsha, and she can have them on the website. It's no problem. They're all on a YouTube channel. We've got booklets that you can download, that you can have. So, like I say, I am happy to do that. There is also on the EHA website a section called Active Huntington's Disease, or Active Huntington's, which also has more information on that. And just in terms of the different interventions, because there may be people who say, actually, I'm struggling to be active and I need some help. Your physiotherapist should be able to guide you and advise you on different exercises, different balance exercises. They should be able to work with the carers to think about how carers can help you, thinking about whether they may be needing to assess your environment in terms of falls, thinking about breathing exercises, which are really important, and then relaxation. And I'm sure I saw a relaxation workshop this afternoon. So thinking about those kinds of aspects, how to maintain posture, range of motion. Okay. So finally, the last sort of part of this discussion is that you'll see on your tables some A3 papers with a tree on it, which matches your tree. And there are some orange or green sticky notes. I'd be really grateful if you could just sit down and think about one thing that you've learned about physical activity, or if anything has changed about the way you think about physical activity, and write it on your sticky note and stick it on your trees. And what we're going to be doing is going around and taking photos of those trees and sharing them back with you so that you can be thinking about what it is that you may do differently as a result of what we've been talking about today. Okay, so are there any questions? Or maybe you're not having questions, I don't know. Maybe it's straight over to Ed.